Hey, Seth here to talk to you about flying your drone in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Are you allowed to do it? If so, where? Recently, I found out about a forest order which spells it all out for you. This order actually goes back to 2019 and spells out exactly where you can and cannot take off or land your drone from. And I use the words take off or land specifically because while the White Mountain National Forest can forbid you from launching or landing at a certain spot, they cannot prevent you from flying over it because they don't control the airspace. Only the FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority, controls that. So aside from wilderness areas, which we'll touch upon, you are allowed to fly over these spots, but you need to do so by being at least a quarter mile away. Keep in mind, you still must obey all of the rules and regulations laid out by the FAA when it comes to flying your drone. That means maintaining visual line of sight with your drone at all times, keeping your drone less than 400 feet above ground level at all times, and then you have to follow the necessary rules and regulations regarding flying over people. Between these rules and the rules outlined by the White Mountain National Forest, it can be tricky to find places to legally fly. So where you're not allowed to take off from? Well, you got alpine zones, trailheads, campgrounds, you got high mountain huts, shelters, roads, some entire trails. You got a bunch of ponds and also some ski mountains. And then there are local town ordinances. So depending on if you're flying in a town, you want to check out their local statutes, which may prohibit you from flying from certain areas. You also have state parks. So Crawford Notch and Franconia Notch, those are New Hampshire state parks. They're their own entity separate from the White Mountain National Forest, but their regulations are basically the same. You are not allowed to take off or land from inside of a New Hampshire state park. So keep that in mind as well. And then, of course, there are wilderness areas. Wilderness areas are a large swath of the White Mountain National Forest. You cannot take off or land from them. You can also not fly in them at all because they are actually designated as a restricted airspace by the FAA. So you have to keep out of them entirely. Now, the document itself does a very good job of laying all this out. It makes it very clear. So let's take a look at where you cannot fly your drone. Number one, all trailheads in the White Mountain National Forest. So there you go, every single trailhead. So if you park your car and start walking in the woods to go hiking, chances are you cannot fly your drone there. It's off limits. All campgrounds, picnic areas, huts, shelters, cabins, developed tent sites, and day use recreational areas. Basically, any place where people congregate in the backcountry or otherwise is off limits. They have begun updating the signs. I was at Kinsman Pond Shelter in August of last year, and they had updated the sign at the shelter to indicate that drones were not allowed within a quarter mile. So keep that in mind. A lot of the signs haven't been updated yet in the whites to reflect this policy, but they are starting to be updated. And so you should be aware of them, and you need to follow the rules even if the sign hasn't been updated. Alpine zones. Well, that makes sense. I mean, we are people. We can't have nice things. So all of the alpine zones listed there are off limits. You cannot take off or land from them. Now, theoretically, you could be, if you're before you get to the alpine zone, a quarter mile away, you could take off and fly over to that, and that would be in compliance with this. And then roads. I'll be honest, I was surprised that you couldn't fly your drone from roads. And they cover a lot of roads here, not only backcountry roads north of the Pemi, like Gale River and Haystack, but you also have major roads. You have Route 16, Route 302, and even the King and Magus Highway. I had no idea that you could not launch your drone from the Kang. And so I'm very surprised at that. Obviously, we've all seen plenty of footage on social media of people flying from the Kang. So clearly, people either don't care or don't know. I was completely ignorant of this until a few months ago. So it's definitely probably not common knowledge. I think they could really benefit by putting some big signs when you enter the Kang, letting people know they cannot fly their drones there, because as far as I know, they don't have anything like that. But let me know if I'm wrong. Then they just designate a bunch of trails as off limits in their entirety. Amamusik, Franconia Falls Trail, just any popular trail that sees a lot of traffic, just no drones allowed whatsoever. Bodies of water, so a lot of popular ponds that you find in the backcountry are off limits, so no flying your drone from these many ponds. And then ski areas, so Attitash, Loon Mountain, Waterville Valley, and Wildcat, you cannot fly your drone from those ski areas. But the best thing about this document is the last page, which outlines with a map exactly where you can't fly from. As you can see, they indicate alpine zones with this gray. It looks like they're covered in mold. That's kind of nasty. You have the wilderness areas here in dark green, so you cannot launch your drone land there. You can also not even enter those because it's a restricted area. If you see this TH, that means it is considered an official trailhead and you are not allowed to launch your drone from there. These whole sections of road, so major roads just in their entirety are off limits to drone use. You have backcountry shelters like Valley Way here. Over here, you have Perkins Notch. These are places you can also not fly your drone from. So as you can see, here's the Kangamangas Highway. It is off limits along with all of these trailheads. By default, they're off limits anyway because they're on the Kang. A lot of overlap, a lot of places you can't fly. It is a little disheartening when you look at it, but there are also a lot of places you can fly. Many of them you're just going to have to go hiking up into the mountains to get to. So definitely a lot of places off limits, a lot more than I realized. I was definitely surprised by a lot of the stuff in this document. I took down some of my videos which featured some questionable drone footage, and I'll probably be releasing them edited without that footage. And I will do my best to just follow these rules that they've laid out. There's still plenty of places you can fly in the whites. You just have to be willing to hike up to a lot of them. Thanks much for watching. Let me know what you thought. If you have any questions, if I got anything wrong, please post a comment below and let me know. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.